Today we're going to begin to talk about World War II. A lot going on in this time period. We're not going to focus a lot on the big causes of war. We're going to pretty much just look at it from the totalitarian governments to the end. There's so much we could say here, and I could make these lectures hours long. I'm sure that none of you want that. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit easier on all of us. The first thing I want to show you is this World War II timeline. I'm going to give you a hard copy of this, but I put it on here so you could see it, and you can kind of come back and use it as a reference. But again, you're going to have a hard copy of that, okay? World War II begins in Europe. The actual war, not our part in it, but the actual war begins September 3rd, 1939. And of course, that's going to be started by Germany. And it's going to progress from there. And I'm going to kind of scroll so you can see a few things, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about it. But this is Mussolini. He actually comes to power first. And a lot going on, a lot of problems exist in Italy after World War I. They had lost nearly 500,000 soldiers, a lot of debt. All of the European countries had a lot of debt. And we talked in the United States where we had the Roaring 20s, and then we had the Great Depression. And really, in Europe, they didn't have a roaring anything. It pretty much was World War I ends, and they all pretty much were in a depression to begin with. So they had a really hard time. Italy was pretty hard hit too. You've got a lot of debt. You've got a lot of unemployment. It says the decline of the lira. That's their money. Bread, food prices go up. Shortages in coal. And then you're going to begin to see a peasant uprising, seizing the land from the wealthy. Y'all listen, that is communism, and that's what we had seen in the Soviet Union. And so you've got some communists here who, again, remember, they wanted to export revolution, and here you see it. And add to that the worker strikes in the cities. You have a lot of chaos. Some of the same things we see in the United States, talking about the sphere of communism that we had. You can see these things going on here. But Mussolini, of all things, he was an editor of a newspaper. He was a newspaperman. But he's going to begin to write some editorial about what we should do. And he's pretty brutal with taking down those communists. Has his brown shirts and again, brutal. But he gains a huge following because he's able to take care of the problems that they're having. So he's going to be elected. You have Hitler. He's going to come to power in 1932. Around the same time as FDR. Now, you'll notice here that, and the reason I put these pictures here, this is German. These are kids and people playing with German money, playing. And you see these huge blocks of money. Money was worthless, okay? Look at this, German banknotes being pulped for waste paper. They're lighting a stove using those banknotes. This is in 1923. Again, roaring 20s in the United States, and their money is so worthless. They're burning it. They're pulping it. They're playing with it. Children's blocks. They're having fun. This man is using it for wallpaper. So you got a lot of problems, and Hitler has answers. Now, we know what Hitler's answers lead to, but he has answers and how to make this go away, how to make this better. Okay, and then of course you also have Tojo in Japan, and Japan after World War I really is the dominant power in Asia, and they're going to begin to look at increasing their power and their influence and their territory. And of course, we're also in the Pacific, and so this is eventually going to lead them into conflict with us. So let's kind of look at the movement of these armies, and we can kind of see how this goes. Now, again, you can refer back to the timeline to see the actual order. I'm going to put these in order by country, not in chronological order. Hitler, when he takes over, he really talks a lot about, it's kind of going back to this nationalism that we had seen, but bringing all of our ethnic Germans together, expanding, having that empire we used to have. And so he's immediately going to be able, he's immediately just going to move. Now, this is good for their economy too. He's going to begin to build his army back up, which had been denied them. That was a right that was denied them with the Treaty of Versailles. He's going to quit paying reparations to Britain and France. And again, the League of Nations was supposed to be there to stop this from happening, and yet they do nothing. As we talked about when we looked at All Quiet on the Western Front, Europe is tired. And right now, at least Britain and France are willing to do just about anything to avoid war. And that's the problem. And Hitler knows that. Hitler realizes that, and so Hitler's going to go out and see how far he can push them. So in 1936, Germany is going to reoccupy the Rhineland. Now, after World War I, this land became a demilitarized zone. And it's in Western Germany. It is to protect France. France is a little frightened of Germany along the Rhine River. And the idea is that German army can't be in there, and that'll protect France. So in 1936, Germany's just going to retake it. And the League of Nations does nothing. 1938. Hitler is going to move his army into Austria and declare Anschluss, with Austria, and that's essentially union. He is going to annex Austria. Now, you've got a lot of people in Austria who are standing in the streets as the tanks roll in, and they are cheering, and they are excited, and they are happy. And then you have others, namely the government, but also regular citizens who see a problem with this, who are not so excited. And, but you know, he just annexes a whole nother country. No problem. And the League of Nations isn't going to do anything. And Britain and France are looking at Hitler. They're looking at his moves. And I'm sure that there's some concern there. But there's also this feeling of, well, you know, and they begin to justify what he's doing. Well, it used to be theirs. They used to control that. He's not really moving beyond his old borders, talking about the old German Empire borders. And so really the League of Nations does nothing, because to stop Hitler, you're going to have to fight him, and they don't want to. Also in 1938, Hitler's going to begin to look and turn his eyes toward Czechoslovakia. And there's an area in Czechoslovakia that is occupied by about 3 million ethnic Germans. And Hitler is going to claim that the Czechoslovakians were mistreating those ethnic Germans, and that the only way to solve that problem was for Germany to occupy, to take the Sudetenland. The Czechoslovakian government was not on board with that, but Germany's ready to move, and they're going to take it, and you know, that might mean force, and force might lead to war. The British and the French not on board with that, not really liking the idea of war, and so there's going to be a meeting. I believe it was hosted by Mussolini in Munich, and they're going to invite the French and the British. The British are going to be the French are going to be represented by Darlier, and the British by Neville Chamberlain. And they're all going to meet in Munich, and they're going to come up with a deal. And this is going to be the Munich Pact. And you do need to know the Munich Pact. But this deal was that Britain and France are going to give Germany the Sudetenland just to avoid war. Now, I want to say this again. Britain and France are going to give Hitler a part of another country that doesn't belong to them. Czechoslovakia was not invited to the Munich meeting. Okay? And so they're giving away part of another country to avoid war with Hitler. This is appeasement. This is appeasement. And think about a grocery store. You think about the kid. He doesn't get the sucker he wants, so he pitches a fit. Mama's got one of two choices. You know exactly what those choices are. Give it to him to shut him up, or pop him, spank him, however you want to term it, and make him stop. Now, in both cases, you're going to have quiet kids. The real answer there is the next time you go into the store. The kid who got the candy is going to do it again, and he's going to keep doing it. He's going to keep doing it. The kid who knows that mama's going to, take care of business is going to listen and say, yes, ma'am, sit down and be quiet. That's what happens here. And should Britain and France have been willing to go to war, and it would have been a small thing to stop Germany. Would that have stopped everything? Possibly. At least slowed them down. Anyway, Munich Pact, really, really bad thing. Neville Chamberlain goes back to London, gets off the plane, and he declares, we have secured peace in our time. And it lasts for just a few months. I think 5 months, and then it's done. The next year, Germany is going to take the rest of Czechoslovakia. At this point, they've been weakened. Britain and France have given away, I guess, maybe a third of their country. And what do? Who's going to back them up? It's not Britain and France. And once he's taken Czechoslovakia, he's going to turn and begin to think about Poland. And he's going to use the same claims against Poland that he had used against Czechoslovakia. Oh, the Polish government is mistreating our ethnic Germans living there. The only choice we have is to take it. Britain and France at this point realize that if we let him take Poland, there's no stopping him. And probably should have realized that in 1938. But at this point, Britain and France are going to draw a line in the sand. Now, I truly do not think that Hitler believes them. I truly do not believe that Hitler believes that they will actually go to war to save Poland. Okay, I just want to say that. And we'll talk about Poland in a minute. Benito Mussolini in Italy. He's not going to be as aggressive as Hitler is, but in 1935 he is going to invade Ethiopia. It was called Abyssinia at the time, not Ethiopia, but still it was more for prestige. Remember, land equals power, so he's just going to go out there and gain this empire. Okay, in the Pacific, Tojo is going to begin earlier than his European counterparts. He's going to begin in 1931, and he's going to invade Manchuria. This is kind of a huge northern province of China. And again, just like we saw up here, because again, what does the League of Nations do with all of this? And the answer is nothing. So when they invade Manchuria, the League of Nations is going to investigate. And then they're going to decide that they are wrong, so they're going to condemn Japan. And Japan just quits the League of Nations. They just quit it. Oh, okay. So really the League of Nations did nothing. In 1937, they're going to again invade mainland China. And because war had not been declared, the United States was able to help the Chinese with aid that did not violate the Neutrality Acts. Okay, and by this point, we actually have a new alliance, and that is the Axis powers: Germany, Italy, and Japan. So these are the powers that we're going to be fighting against. Now, here I want to show you the big three. Okay, and you just got these three pictures right here. You've got Joseph Stalin. He is the dictator of the Soviet Union, And you've got Winston Churchill. He always has that look on his face. He is the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And then you have FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, who is President of the United States. Now, is it odd that we are partners with a dictator? And it is. But at the same time, you've got to look at who would you rather be friends with and who would you rather help. So we'll talk about how we become friends and really allies with the Soviet Union. Remember, let's look at this really fast. After World War I, we're kind of looking at things. The United States is standing over here, and we look at Europe and we think, wow, boy, they do stupid things, don't they? He's hitting his head over. He's hitting himself in the head with a hammer. Feels so good when I quit. But we don't really understand Europe, do we? And so when we begin to see this aggression in Germany and Italy, and even in Japan, we're going to declare neutrality. We don't want to have anything to do with it. We're going to stand on the outside of that. And even though we had been in World War I less than European nations, and we had lost less than the European nations, both in terms of money, territory, and lives, we don't want to get involved in another international conflict. And you think about the fact that a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, why would we get involved with that? We're still fighting our Great Depression. Let's look at our problems here and not pay attention to other people's problems over there. And so Congress, beginning in 1935, is going to begin to pass a series of neutrality acts. And that's going to prohibit the sale of weapons to warring nations. And so it really is going to tie our hands once things get really bad and the war actually begins. And really by late 1937, neutrality was becoming very difficult for us. And there's going to be a quarantine speech given by FDR in 1937. And he's going to begin to speak out against isolationism. And he is going to call on peace-loving nations, i.e. the United States, to quarantine aggressor nations to stop the spread of war. You don't know what a quarantine is. You take your sick person and you put them in a separate room. You put them off to themselves so and you treat it like a contagion, and you stop war, you stop those aggressive nations, and you don't let them spread the war like it was a disease or something. And then there's Poland. I told you that Poland is where all this begins. Poland is the line in the sand for Britain and France. And on September 1st, 1939, German forces are going to invade Poland. And no one is more surprised than Germany when on September 3rd, Great Britain and France declare war. Germany totally did not think that would happen. I'm also going to point out that at this point, there has also been a non-aggression pact, and I'm going to go back and we're going to look at this, that there's a non-aggression pact that has been signed with, okay, I can't find it right now. There's a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, but essentially that they're not going to invade each other. They're not going to hurt each other. And so really Hitler feels safe against the threat of the Soviet Union. So he realizes he's not going to be fighting a two-front war here. And so war begins September 3rd. And then they kind of sit. They begin the Sitzkrieg, the sitting war, for 5 months. And finally Germany's going to move. And they're going to spring into action with the Blitzkrieg in the spring of 1940. And they're going to conquer Denmark, Norway, for bases so they can attack Great Britain. And then they're going to go to the Netherlands and then Belgium and Luxembourg by 1940. And I want to point this out, this travelogue. And you can kind of look and see North China, that was the Japanese, and Ethiopia was the Italians, Austria, Anschluss, Czechoslovakia with the Sudetenland, Albania. But look, Poland, and then you can Finland. That's what the Soviets are going to take. But Denmark, Norway, Luxembourg, Holland, Belgium, these right here, this is the Blitzkrieg. This is the Blitzkrieg. And what all of these countries have in common are these are the nations that have been attacked and invaded during this time. So in that initial push, they're going to conquer the northern countries, and then they're going to turn their eyes toward France. And in June, the late spring 1940, German troops are going to enter Paris, and France is going to surrender. And Germany is going to make France sign an armistice that gives half of the country to German control, and the other half is going to be ruled by a pro-German government known as the Vichy regime. Now listen, France fell quickly. France, they weren't prepared. You can see Germany getting ready, and France was building their Maginot Line, and they just weren't prepared. And Germany wanted to humiliate France, and they did so. The British army is there, but the French army is also still fighting them, and they do fight. It's not like they just sit there and let them roll in. The French army and the British army that's there, they do fight, and it is a bloody fight, but the Germans are just too strong, and they are going to back the British and the French troops up to a town called Dunkirk. And the Battle of Dunkirk is amazing. 400,000 French and British soldiers are trapped. Their back is to the sea, and the Germans are at their front. And how do you save 400,000 people? How? Well, the British government called on British civilians. And if you have a boat, we can use you. And so everybody who had a boat, whether it was a yacht, whether it was a merchant ship, whether it was a sailboat, if it could float, they floated it across the English Channel to Dunkirk, and they literally saved the French and British army. And it is an amazing story of the war. Once France falls, they're going to turn their attention on Britain. Now Britain is, strategically speaking, in a pretty good place. It's an island, and you have to invade with a ship or with a plane. And so the British are ready for a naval battle. They're ready for a naval invasion. And they try to get ready for anything that they're going to encounter. And the German offensive is huge. And it's over a long period of time. Look, July to October. And this is going to be an air battle. They're just going to continually bomb Great Britain. Bomb, bomb, bomb. And they're going to attempt to destroy the British Air Force. Hitler has 2,600 planes. And on August 15th, there were 2,000 German planes over Britain. And it was just every night, every night, every night. And, you know, for 2 months, those German bombers just pound London. And it lasts through the summer and the fall of 1940. And you have these air raid sirens. They're coming. Everybody has to turn off their lights. You have blackout shades because that's how they are able to see where the city is, where London is by looking for the lights. And so everybody has their lights off. And the bombing comes at night. And you have, if you're out, you head to the subways, but they're bombing apartments and houses and the city, and it is not a military target. It is definitely one that was meant to take the people out of the war. And an amazing thing happened. They kept on going. They kept living their life, and they got up every day and they went to work, and they refused to give in. They refused to surrender. And what's really going to end up helping the British in the end is radar. Um, on September 15th, 1940, the British shot down 185 German planes while they only lost 26 British planes. And eventually you get to the point where the Germans are losing so many planes. That was in one night. 185 planes in one night. And so you keep having nights like that. It's not something that the Germans can easily overcome. So in October of 1940, Hitler's going to give up on trying to take Britain and leave go. Now, he did mean to go back. He just never really had the opportunity because the United States is getting ready to get involved. We officially get involved, of course, after Pearl Harbor. But the reality is that we were already involved. When Britain is being attacked, understand at this point, it is just Britain holding out against Germany. France has fallen, the rest of Europe has fallen, and it is just Britain. And they can't do it alone. And Roosevelt wants to encourage the United States to back intervention. And Churchill needs us to get involved in the war, or at least to give them more aid. And so what you're going to see is the Atlantic Charter. And this is a joint declaration of war aims by the United States and Great Britain, and of course sets up a post-war international system. But understand that this is a joint declaration of war aims before we're in the war. It shows our commitment to oppose German and Japanese aggression. Now here's the thing. FDR stated he couldn't declare war, but he could force Germany to attack. Now, I'm going to point this out because there's a lot of people who felt like FDR allowed Pearl Harbor to happen. And some people can go back to this and look at it, and we can look at why we got involved. And you can look at conspiracy theories with Bush and 9/11. He knew about it and he wanted it to happen because he wanted to go. Did he know? No, I don't think he did. However, it is important to understand that FDR stated point blank, I can't declare war until we've been attacked, but we can move them to attack us. Now he's talking about Germany here, okay? And we're putting ourselves in their way. We're protecting, our Navy is protecting those Lend-Lease goods. And we're pretty much by 1941 in an undeclared naval war with Germany. Now Lend-Lease here, we start this in March of 1941. We begin to back away from those neutrality acts. And it's essentially exactly what it says, because one of our problems with World War I was, selling arms to other places. The deal here is we start with cash and carry. If you have the cash and you can carry it away, it's yours. And then, of course, Britain is going to run out of money. They need more than they can buy. And so we're going to move to Lend-Lease. We will lend you, and then you can lease the stuff. And eventually, though, we're going to move also to destroyers for bases deals. We give them destroyers, and they give us land for bases. It's all good, right? But we have to get around those neutrality acts. And what we find by the time we get involved in the war is that Germany is fighting Britain, but also at this point they have invaded the Soviet Union. So we've got two powers alone fighting the German machine, okay? And they were not faring very well. So Lend-Lease was our way of being able to help both the Soviet Union and Great Britain. Why the Soviet Union? Even though they are communists, and remember the Red Scare, and we don't like communists, and we definitely don't like the Soviet Union. We don't like the Germans more. Okay, who do we help? Who do you help? Do you let Hitler take the Soviet Union just because they're communists? And Stalin's going to accuse us of that, but no. And then of course there's Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, which FDR declared was a day that which will live in infamy. The background: in July of 1941, the French military, the Japanese are going to take the French military bases in Indochina. For us, that would be Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. And then we're going to embargo oil. We're going to issue an embargo on oil. They need our oil. They need our oil for their war machine, and we're going to deny it to them. And need is the appropriate word. They need it. They do not have the natural resources on their own, and we have been providing that. And so the Japanese are in a dilemma. They can either attack the United States, or they can take the Dutch East India oil fields. Either of which are going to mean war. So, let's just, go big or go home, right? So, Japan's going to attack the United States on December 7th, 1941. A few things on that. The guy who, Yamamoto, he did not believe that he would be successful. Well, then why do it? He was really trying to take out the Pacific Fleet, and he was nearly successful. Here's why a lot of people feel like FDR knew it was coming. Our newest ships were not in Pearl Harbor. Our newest ships had been shipped out, and they were in other parts of the Pacific. The ships that are sunk on December 7th are our more obsolete ships. I don't think that he knew, though. I don't think that he would have sacrificed all of those lives just so we could declare war. Did we know something was coming? Yeah, we did. There had been some chatter. We did know something was coming. We didn't know when. We didn't know where specifically. I think an attack on Pearl Harbor was pretty audacious. I mean, I think that's a pretty big thing. And I don't think they thought that there was any way they could carry that out. But they did. And now it's not the Germans who bring us into the war, but the Japanese. But here we are. And World War II for us has begun. Okay, so write your question down. Make it a good one about the lecture. And turn it in, and tomorrow I will answer those questions.